I would say SEO has been dead for a while. It doesn't mean that the skills involved in doing SEO well are irrelevant. But here's just the honest truth. SEO has not been a meaningful factor in Google search for some time now. You really started to see SEO, at least like organic SEO. Like you can make a distinction between like organic SEO and like paid SEO. And you started to really see in the late 2010s, like when you searched for something on Google, you didn't get the best SEO page at the top. You got a set of ads. You got a set of paid promotions that overrode all of the other SEO work that was being done for free on the back end of websites.
Hello and welcome to What Would Jesus Tech? My name is Andrew Noble and I'm excited to chat with Austin and Joel today. One thing before we jump in is that if you sign up on our Patreon right now, we are doing a live Q&A in just 2 weeks. You can ask us any question. We've already been asked a couple questions that I think will be a little bit spicy, or at least one of them will. One's an easy question, one's a spicy question where I know we will debate the answer. And so if you are interested in hearing more of WWJT, you can sign up for just $1 a month on Patreon and have access to that additional content. So the way that I want to talk about this episode is that I don't want to talk about marketing, though I know that's kind of what we're talking about. I want to talk about loving our neighbor through how we communicate. And to do that well, we need to choose the right medium. So when John wrote his letter in 2 John, he says, I have much to write to you. It's one of the shortest books in the Bible. He says, I have much to write to you in 2 John verse 12, but I'd much rather see you face to face so that our joy may be complete. He understands the limits of some mediums and prefers face to face, but yet he still writes the letter to say that. And so in our day, we need to think about text messages, email, other website content is communication. It's a form of loving your neighbor, is having a website so that people can know what time to show up to your church on Sunday if you're a pastor. Or if you're an organization, you're trying to sell a product, you need to have a good website. And one of the things that good websites used to need to have was SEO. You know what SEO is, right, Joel?
Yeah, I actually never was an expert in search engine optimization,
I
but there
hated
is
it. I
something that
hated it
I
so
always
much.
looked at.
What's your layman understanding of how to optimize SEO, Joel?
I think, okay, so search engine optimization focuses on the first two words, search engine. So back in the day, actually, before I think Google was the ubiquitous one, there were other ones like Ask Jeeves or Alta
Ooh,
Vista
shout
or
out.
whatever.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a blast from the past.
So a bunch of those engines, you want to increase your website's ability to rank on the first page because it's going to increase the likelihood that people are going to click to it. Or with Google's I'm feeling lucky, the very first result is the only one that it goes to, right? So people started gaming like, how do I get my website to be more optimized to line up with the search engine's results? And there's different ways of including specific keywords on your website so that when the search engine crawlers, which is kind of a process that the engine search companies go through of like documenting the whole internet. So when those crawlers go through, they'll be like, hey, like this website has these keywords. So when someone searches for it, this is a good rank, a good resource to pop up. And people would even do things like in invisible text at the bottom of the website, just like add a bunch of like words
Yep.
to try and, game it to like make their website more relevant. So there's a bunch of activities that you could do to improve your search engine result. And that became a whole field of, experts to do search engine optimization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could be hired by a company to be an SEO expert. That was a real job.
Yeah.
And remains. But Austin, would you say SEO is dead?
I would say SEO has been dead for a while. It doesn't mean that the skills involved in doing SEO well are irrelevant. But here's just the honest truth. SEO has not been a meaningful factor in Google search for some time now. You really started to see SEO, at least organic SEO. Like you can make a distinction between like organic SEO and like paid SEO. Uh, and you started to really see in the late 2010s, like when you searched for something on Google, you didn't get the best SEO page at the top. You got a set of ads, you got a set of paid promotions that overrode all of the other SEO work that was being done for free on the back end of websites. And then Gemini comes around, and Gemini, or whatever Google was calling it before they called it Gemini officially, started doing AI summaries of your searches to where those things got pushed even more further down the page. And so it's not dead in the sense of like it doesn't matter anymore. Or the skills that went into it don't matter anymore. You can take those skills and repurpose them to other things. But like, if anyone tries to tell you that, like, yeah, if anyone tries to tell you you could use SEO to like get more people to your website, that's just not true. And it hasn't been true for a while. There have been other factors at play that determine what links people will click on far before SEO comes into the picture.
So the evolution of the internet, if we were to put it this way, based around what you're saying, is first there was a whole bunch of websites and it was difficult to navigate. And then there was something called search engines, and search engines became the go-to way to navigate the internet. And it would do that for you, sort them, rank them, etc. But then sometime in the 2010s, we already started to be able to say, define a word, and then you'd get the dictionary definition within Google, or you'd be able to say 2 + 2 equals in the search browser, and all of a sudden Google was building in a calculator. They were making it easier for you to get what you wanted faster, and this was a positive experience. Fast forward to 2024 when they're introducing AI results and they're starting to say, how do you get cheese to stick to the top of pizza? And they're saying things in their AI results like add a little bit of glue on top. They did do this for a while because they pulled the result from Reddit, and top votes on Reddit, everyone thought that was funny to add glue to get cheese to stick to pizza. And so that's what the AI summary was saying. So it's gone through some learning curves, and they need to, have humans behind it. There's thousands of engineers working on that process of optimizing your search engine experience. But we are at a point now where LLMs, large language models, you can call it AI if you want as well. I'm not going to bully people and fight about the terminology. It's AI, whatever.
I think that's right. I agree.
We could spend so much time arguing about the definition of AI, but now we are in a new phase of the internet where it's people want the result right away. And now we're losing the obviously human interaction, and we're just getting the filtered result through the machine of an LLM to give us the response when we Google.
And I mean, we should probably color that last change a little bit more in the sense that like there were people selling off Google stock, for example, being like search is dead, right? Because there was a new habit of people would say, hey, just Google something. And then people would be like, well, just ask ChatGPT. And all of that quote unquote search traffic started being shifted to OpenAI, and search revenue is, I don't even know, like the majority
billions
of
of
Google's
dollars.
revenue. Like it's like the most of what Google makes money off of. So that was a huge threat to them as a company to be like, oh my gosh, could we be replaced by ChatGPT?
In some cases, I mean, I think in some cases it already has. I mean, I have not done much in the way of standard Google searching this year. I've been using Perplexity as my primary search engine because it is better than Google, in all honesty. It is a much more helpful search engine and a much more natural step up of what search engines could be doing, should be doing. So yeah, Google should have been threatened, because I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah, so they really had to stop the bleeding by introducing that like AI summary, because that might have, if they didn't do that, then people might have just been like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to go to something else because this is too much effort to go through all of these links and search when I just want a simple answer, right? Maybe not always the case, but they became a modality of I want to search something and go through all of these links, or I just want an answer,
Yeah.
which is what the I'm feeling lucky kind of was supposed to do back in the
Hmm.
day.
And that was fun. Like, that was a fun feature, but, like, it eventually outwore its welcome, and, like, people were like, "No, I wanna see, like, the list of options before I click on something," but now people don't wanna click on anything anymore.
Mhm.
Mhm. So we want to love our neighbors. We're Christians. And so if we'll just start with a church example. Austin, you're in pastoral ministry, but it's relevant, obviously, from your past job working at the Gospel Coalition as a social media manager. You have some experience thinking about this stuff, and your
Yeah.
strategies have been very effective in getting ahead of this stuff because there are different places on the internet now. We've talked about it before on episodes, but how should pastors, marketers, whatever they're thinking about communicating through the internet? This is a new world now. So what are we supposed to do? What
I mean,
what should we be doing? Should we be just building out email lists? Should we be posting more things on social media? Should we
no.
be, there's so many things to
No.
do.
There's so many things to do, but Andrew, you said at the onset you didn't want this to be a marketing episode, and then you gave genuinely one of the best speeches on marketing that I've heard a non-marketer give in a long time. Uh, Marketers, especially Christian marketers, genuinely want to communicate well with the people that they need to communicate with. Like, that is something that deeply burdens them. They get very discouraged and frustrated when, whether due to circumstance or orders from the top, they have to use ineffective means of communicating with the people they're trying to communicate. And so there's a pipeline between, like, pastoral ministry and marketing and communications.
Mhm.
That's kind of a meme, honestly, at this point. Like, if a pastor has a scandal and a falling out, they just go work in marketing and advertising. But the reason why there's a lot of overlap there is because the fundamentals of good marketing and the fundamentals of good pastoral ministry have a lot in common. And they both funnel down to loving your neighbor well by communicating with them well.
Mhm.
Unclear communication is unloving. Clear communication is a kindness to somebody. If you want to love someone, communicate well with them. And that's true
Mhm.
in marketing, and that's true in pastoral ministry. Now, the how you do that, the tactical side of that, is definitely that's where most people think of marketing. When a lot of people think of marketing, they're thinking about the tactics. Do I send an email? Do I social media post, a text message? But that's the top of the iceberg. That's the 15% of the iceberg above the water. The 85% underneath the surface is much more foundational. What am I trying to say? Who am I trying to say it to? What am I wanting them to hear from this? And once you determine that, that should determine what you see on top. And the problem is that's not what always happens. But pastors, especially to land the plane, pastors definitely need to reevaluate everything that they are currently doing, not necessarily so that they can change all of it, but they do need to do an audit of how they communicate with their staff, with their church, with the community, just to ask, is this actually communicating with the people that I want to communicate with? And
Hmm.
there are some things where the answer is probably going to be yes. There's probably going to be some things that the answer is going to be no. But with everything that's happening right now, it's worth at least asking, hey, we've been doing this for a long time. Is this actually helping us? And I'm more
Mhm.
than willing to bet there's something that every church is doing and it's just been doing for years now, uh, that isn't actually mattering that much and is taking up time that could be spent doing other things.
No, that's well said. It's interesting. You have different churches, and the announcements portion of the service can range from 2 minutes to 20
Oh, don't
minutes.
please don't get me please do not get me started on church announcements. That you
it's
want please don't get me started on that.
it's a funny thing where people are like, "Oh, people won't come to my event unless I do a church announcement," or they
No.
won't come to my event unless I get in the weekly church email. And
Yeah,
it's
oh my
like,
gosh.
there are other ways to communicate. There are other
Yes.
ways to
Oh
love
my
people.
gosh.
Um, so one thing to add, I'd want to get into the practical tactics. But one thing I'd add to what you're saying is it's loving to not be boring. Like, a boring sermon is a bad
Oh yeah.
sermon, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Augustine was pushed. He's one of the greatest theologians ever. Not who didn't actually write scripture, but outside of it. And he was accused of using language that was just too engaging, too poetic. You're using too much flourish and rhetoric, you know? And he defends himself. He's like, how should I speak about the glories of God? Should I not use
Right.
splendor and majesty in my language to reflect his?
Yeah.
And so, and it's appropriate to, think about the hook. Think about the very first
Yeah.
line of your email to
Yeah.
your church every week. Maybe shouldn't be, here's the time that we meet this week. Like it's the email that everyone's, you're going to teach people to scroll and ignore your email.
Yes. Oh yeah. Don't even get me started, man. Don't even.
So here's my most practical takeaway from what we're seeing right now. We are seeing more and more people use LLMs to get answers that they're looking for. We are increasingly needing personal touch. We are desiring physical contact, personal touch, and something that is written by a human, obviously, rather than just gathering together information. So I would say if you are someone who wants to make disciples of others, in other words, you're a Christian, and you are thinking about interacting with those people outside of just in-person stuff. If they're over 50, rule of thumb, call them. If they're a millennial, 30 to 50, rule of thumb, send them an email. If they're less than 30, rule of thumb, send a text message. That is going to generally be the way to communicate with those age populations because that's the way that they've acclimatized. But ultimately, if you are a pastor or a ministry leader or you're a tech CEO, you need to think first and foremost, not about your social media followers or your website visits even. You need to think about your email list. The gold rush of the 2020s is who can build the best email list. In the same way that a miner looks at his gold is how a communicator looks at their email list in 2026.
The fundamental of good communication is getting the right message to the right people in the right way. And when one of those three things is off, your communication suffers. And the problem is that especially for the past 15 years in the social media age, pastors and church leaders have used their social media channels as kind of like the silver bullet solution. It's fast, it's free, like just to say whatever they want to say about the church. But the problem is that it's often not the right message, it's often not reaching the right people, and it's often not reaching them in the right way. Email is a selective medium in that you can choose who you're emailing. Which then means you can choose what message you send to them, and it's durable. So they can go back to it more easily. They can find it more easily. If you put something out on social media and it's like, oh, what was that thing again? When did that event start? Or, where did I need to go for that? It's like, well, I got to now search for the church's Instagram page and then, find that post. Where if it's an email, it's immediately accessible in a way that a social media post is not. And so, go ahead.
I was going to say, I do think email is actually a pretty good medium, and I hadn't thought about it until this moment. But I'll caveat that with saying that I really don't spend as much time in my email, or I try not to. It's like almost, it's more frustrating for me. I don't know if that's just me having email fatigue of all these years.
Well, and churches, churches can absolutely contribute to their own email fatigue. I know several churches who every single thing is an email, and they wonder why they can't get anybody's attention for certain things. And it's like, well, you've trained people to tune you out. You've trained people to not pay attention to what you say because you're trying to say too much. You have to say no to some things, because if you say yes to everything, no message is going to get through. Period.
Yeah. And the reason why I do think email is probably a good, as Andrew said, gold rush is actually because of AI. I think that Google, most people will, let's say, use Gmail, will have it so that the AI assistant will become an interface in between your inbox and you. So you'll just like ask it, and it will have that rich repository of, hey, uniquely targeted at you content that you can curate. You can say unsubscribe from all this like spam. So I actually think, email is going to be really good because it's going to be supercharged by your personal AI agent. And that's completely different than what I thought we are going to talk about, which is robots.txt, which I'm not sure if you guys have talked about robots.txt yet.
I will say one recent trend in the church communications world that I do think is actually worth us talking about is the increased availability of apps and app notifications as a substitute for email. Texting services. I had a texting service that I used in my student ministry for several years. I've canceled it just because it was getting increasingly expensive and just wasn't worth it. But there is now a level of like if we think of email as being kind of this broad, all-encompassing category, there's now a whole new realm of smartphone focused marketing tactics that are like group text, like bulk text, automated text, and then app notifications.
Mhm.
And by far, one of the most important tech companies in the church right now is Planning Center. Planning
We got
Center.
to get someone on the podcast from Planning Center.
Oh my gosh, I would love to talk to them.
All right.
Yeah, Planning Center is by far one of the most significant tech developments in the church in the past 20 years, period. And they have a brilliantly simple system for churches to have their own smartphone apps that from the back end, you can send smartphone notifications to certain groups of people. So if I wanted to, I could send all of my youth parents a notification through this app that says, hey, the party's canceled because of whether we're scheduled for another time. And it shows up right there on their phone. It's immediate, it's visible, it's short, it does exactly what I need it to do. And it's part of the paid services of Planning Center, so you're not having to pay for a surcharge on top of everything. And that I think is better than email in some senses because it simply removes all of the last remaining obstacles to people getting that information. People may not have email notifications, or they may have turned email notifications off. But if they have an app for their church that will give them notifications when it comes through, that's better than any email could ever be.
Yeah, I really like it. I think actually, I don't know if it's called Church Center on the phone, but I think
Church Center. Yep, Church Center. That's it.
Parent company is Planning Center. But definitely, it's like, growing up, we'd have like a church directory and we'd have the book, and I'd be like, oh, who's that person? And like, I'd look at the family picture and I'd be like, okay, like that's the kids, that's the parents. Like, okay, I'll reach out to them or talk to them next Sunday. That stuff is all now like in Church Center. And I'm like, oh man, yeah,
it's great.
And
it's wonderful. Like that, like it's wonderful from the pastoral ministry side. It's wonderful as a piece of technology. It is very well made. The training is outstanding. Like I cannot sing the praises of Church Center of Planning Center more highly as a Christian tech company who is genuinely Christian. Like they know the people that they're serving, and they are genuinely excellent at what they make. Could not speak more highly of it.
Yeah, there's other products out there. One of them is called Realm. And,
Realm. I'm about to make this podcast NSFW. Realm is garbage.
Oh, I haven't.
Absolutely garbage.
It is. Yeah, it's.
It's garbage.
It's a 20-year-old product.
Yeah, garbage.
Would you use the same language that Paul uses in Philippians 3 to describe it when he's talking about his,
I would.
His moral deeds prior to becoming a Christian, it's all as rubbish.
Yes,
Paul says.
Realm is made by genuine Christians. I'm not questioning their salvation, not questioning their faith, not anything like that. Like genuinely nice people who have made one of the worst products I've ever used, and nobody will tell them that it's bad.
Inertia is a thing in churches, right? It's hard to change some of these software. We've talked about it before.
Yes.
There are some aspects of church ministry where there should be an openness to trying new things.
Yes.
I think communication is one of them. I think good communicators think about new and different ways in order to use rhetorical flourishes in their sermons. You're thinking about being relevant. You're thinking about contextualizing. Like that's good ministry. Read Tim Keller's Center Church if you want to get a detailed understanding of contextualization that is appropriate to sticking with the truth of the gospel, not changing the truth of the gospel, but communicating it to answer the questions of culture and to question the culture with questions they should be asking. Anyways,
Like the reason I'm so passionate about this is because my church quite literally just moved from Realm to going all in on Planning Center this past fall. Our operations person retired. Wonderful, wonderful woman. I love her to death. But she did not want to leave Realm. She thought Realm was the best thing for us when it was absolutely not. And I cannot describe the level of newfound freedom, time savings, just genuine helpfulness of going all in on Planning Center and what that has done to transform my ministry and other ministries of the church. When you have the right tools for the job, it's amazing how you can serve people well.
So use tools like that. I do want to ask you about your text messaging thing that you do, Austin, but I want to think just for a second. There's so many things I want to talk about. I had no idea this episode is going to be so full. But one of the things that I want to think about is just in the day-to-day, like not the church staff, not church leadership. You are trying to make a disciple. What are you going to do? Are you going to invite someone over for dinner? How are you going to do
Yeah.
that? Like just at the very base level.
Yeah.
If you have people you're in fellowship with, our pastor spoke about this just on Sunday, and just distinguishing that of being in fellowship. So you visit home to home. How are you going to regularly invite them into your home or update them on things going on in your life for prayer requests? Group chats are a very effective means for this. So there are some friendships you're going to have within the church that you're going to have small group chats with. There's going to be others that you're just going to text and follow up with. And sometimes you're going to do this thing where you're planning an event and you don't just send out one email and say, oh, I guess nobody showed up. You're going to communicate in more than one medium in order to effectively hear people where they are. So you're going to say to them after church on Sunday, hey, I'm going to send you an email later today about an event this Friday. Hope you're able to make it. Like you're doing what you can to set up, or you're sometimes changing the event based around feedback, involving them in the process, and then going forward with it. All these little things, like good leaders, good disciple makers, pick up on these things. I think it's what Paul did. Go ahead.
Well, I could give you a recent case study. So I had a end of school party for the families of my student ministry this past Friday, and my plan for communicating that out, getting the word out for it, I started dropping it in like 2 months in advance, like, hey, bookmark this date. We're going to be doing a party. I'll have more details to come. As we got closer and closer, started giving out like date, like time, location, where to register, things like that. I had emails. I had physical handout cards to give to students with a QR code that their parents could use to sign their family up. We were doing stage announcements. It was coming multiple times. I probably made at least 20 different announcements about it in 3 or 4 different mediums. And so by the time registration for that needed to close so we could, buy food and stuff, everybody that could come knew about it. And there were quite a few that couldn't because they were going to go out of town, and that's fine. But a lot of communication failures just come from, oh, I said the thing once in an email, I've done my job. Or I, sent one text message, a month ago and never followed up on it. Good communication involves repetition, and repetition in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's essential. Can you, Austin, talk about your text messaging ministry? It's like a Q&A thing. It's one of the most fascinating things I've heard about. So one of the things to set this up is that when it comes to youth ministry, young adult ministry, I was just talking to a pastor 2 days ago, and he said one of the things he's realizing that takes up so much of his time is people just sending him texts. It's a small church, 50 to 80 people, and they're just texting the pastor, and they're saying, what do you think about this? And they're linking to something. And I think that's great that, like, he's a good pastor. He cares for his people, but he finds that it takes time, and then sometimes he's having to push that off. Tell me about what your text message ministry is, the papyrus and ink of our day that you're using.
Yeah. So for the past several years, my youth ministry has had Q&A, like Q&A on stage as part of our core Wednesday night activities. A group of trained adults, so myself and my former youth minister, my boss, other people that can answer hard questions on the spot would be on stage, and students would be able to text in questions based on the lesson or just based on things that they're thinking about. And we would spend 15 to 20 minutes each week answering that from the stage. It was a huge hit from day one. We've been doing it now for several years, and it was just an absolute, it's one of my favorite things in the whole world. In the time that I was out, while I was at TGC, there was an intern. His name was Silas. Hi, Silas. Who decided, you know what? I'm going to start just writing back to these students. When a kid texts in a question, I'm just going to start responding to these students. And then when I came back into the ministry, when I left TGC to come back to this, I decided to keep that practice going. And so this past school year, so from September to May, I tracked every single text that came in, what the phone number, the date, the phone number, the question. We keep it anonymous so that students can feel free to text in without knowing, not, without outing themselves, so they can ask whatever they want. And then I would spend several hours a week responding back to them. And there were some days it did take me the better part of a day to go through all of the messages, depending upon the text. There were several texts that had to be multiple messages because Google Voice has a cutoff for how many characters you could send in a single text. But what I did recently, and I'm actually working on a piece from Your Orthodoxy about this to explain it, is I took that spreadsheet of all of those questions and all of those answers to it, and I fed it to Claude, and I asked, hey, Claude, do a quantitative and qualitative analysis of all of the information here. What Claude gave back was genuinely incredible. And I just put that PDF in the Mere Orthodoxy Discord server, and there was just a lot of immediately positive feedback from pastors of like, please tell me what you're doing, please how you're doing this. And guys, it's just a Google Voice subscription. Like the hinge here that makes this all possible is that students text in questions to a Google Voice number on Wednesday night. I have an iPad or sometimes my phone if we forget to charge the iPad from the stage with Google Voice on it, and I'm just reading their questions. And then later in the week, I'm just opening Google Voice on my laptop and typing answers back out. Like that's the hinge that makes this all possible. It's like $10 a month. Like and it's been a tremendous success. And it's honestly, I didn't really appreciate even when I left just how big of a deal this was. And it's now become one of the things that like, no, I need to like actively carve out time to stay on top of this. And so I told students like, hey, this line's going to be open all summer long. Text me anytime and I'll personally write back to you. And I've had in the 2 weeks that we've been quote unquote done for the semester, I've had probably a dozen more questions come in. Like it just keeps going.
Yeah, very
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, I think about the church in Corinth and how they're sending letters to Paul, and they're like, "Paul, can you help us figure out this and figure out this and figure out this?"
I do genuinely
it's
view
a real
this
ministry.
as like, yeah, I do genuinely view this as like writing letters to my students. I think of John Newton and his letter writing, of Calvin and Basil and his letter writing, and like, well, this isn't quite the same thing. Like, I do think it's my present equivalent to that, and I didn't fully appreciate that at first, and now it's something that I like, no, I need to actually make this a key piece of how I spend my time. This is how I am discipling these students, and I'm very thankful for the fruit that it's borne.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think about what it would have looked like 20 years ago to describe that to someone. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're going to have these students with a device in their hand and they're going to message you throughout the week, and then you're going to respond to them. Like it's really wild to think about. And we need to, this is what you're saying about do an audit. Do a communications audit of what's going on in your church. Do a communications audit to figure this stuff out and prioritize. And yeah, just like John had a strategy for saying, I'm not going to write any more of this letter because I'd prefer face-to-face. There are some things you prioritize in some ways versus others, and that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting on the point that you mentioned with Pivot, using the Google Voice API as like that being the crux of what enabled you to do more analysis. I think,
Hmm.
in general, the church can do more meta analysis. But I think one of
Oh
the
my gosh, yeah.
gatekeeping to that is that like we're using a bunch of systems that make it manual and difficult. So even just like a few weeks ago at work, I set up a system so that every meeting I'm in, I get the raw transcript. And that
Hmm.
raw transcript, it's like, it's very small, a couple kilobytes. It's stored, it's cataloged. I create a graph, and then I can have my AI agent go through and be like, all the topics relate to this, or all the topics with this person, or like, can you give me that exact quote from that person when he references company? And it's like, boom, instant, right?
Yeah.
So that paradigm again is like retraining our tools, our brains, how to work. But if we can adopt that in, let's say, this like texting situation where you're not just doing plain text, you're using it with Google Voice API in the middle that now enables these advanced capabilities. I think it's a huge tip.
So
You know?
so it's interesting. I'm not really a fan of the Google Voice API. It is actually, from a technical standpoint, like actually kind of annoying to work with. I had to, like, when I say I tracked all of this, I mean I like manually had to copy
Right?
and paste
So
every
manual.
single
Yeah.
thing. There's a lot more functionality that Google could work into this if they wanted to, but that is still something that wasn't possible even 10 years ago. And is something I'm super thankful for. I think too, the advent of Claude Code, in particular, is truly just such a tremendous game changer. I think back to the reports that I was writing for TGC this time a year ago, and I'd have to spend several full days working on. Uh, and I would write good reports, but the insights were just genuinely not as exhaustive as what Claude was able to give me as a rough draft in less than an hour from a single spreadsheet. And it saw things that I would have never picked up on. And so I'm like, yeah, this is good. Like, this is an unqualified, needs no defense, good thing. And I'm thankful for it.
Hmm. Cool. Cool. Yeah, there's always the trade-offs of different technological tools, and I always kind of think about that in the back of my mind, the way that, Plato through Socrates has argued that as soon as you start writing something down,
Yeah.
there's that trade-off. You're going to lose your memory, and certainly this is a side effect. And sometimes you might argue that podcasts are retrieving what Plato was all about. And we're doing the ancient form of wisdom through communicating and using critical thinking. And hopefully our listeners can use their critical thinking along with us. And, it's a one-way thing. You're only listening, but hopefully you're going through and you're trying to apply this to your context. Joel, were you joking about the robots.txt file? Does that actually relate? Because
No,
I
that's
just don't
actually
even
a
know what that
thing.
is.
It actually does relate.
Okay, so just to take a quick jaunter back to where we were on SEO. So the new thing is that LLMs would go and crawl the websites and then use either data for training or, later retrieval. You can add a file called robots.txt, which says like, hey, I don't want my website to be used in training, or this portion is okay, but this portion is off limits, or like this is actually the best way to use it. So it's actually directed at quote unquote robots, which are the digital LLMs. So it's a good practice. It doesn't exactly do, for example, MCP in like saying like, these are all the things you can do with the website, but it's a good first ping that like, Anthropic said they honor. Claude honors robots.txt, and OpenAI has like different bots to honor robots.txt. So it is, probably the cutting edge
Yeah.
of one more thing to do for the new SEO.
Well, in some websites, so Squarespace, which we use for our website, it had a pop-up because we did this thing where when people download the free ebook, we get their email address because we're practicing what we preach. We might as well get their email address to follow up and that sort of thing. But also that enabled us to give this advanced AI feature in Squarespace, which
Hmm.
created what you're describing, but made an easy user face. And they even generated text for me for each of those pages for basically it's like optimize your website for AI. here's
Yeah.
some potential things you could add to the background of this page. Here's what you could add to the background of this page. So Squarespace is ahead of it. Though I don't love Squarespace, and I feel like they're talked about too much. But that's just what we ended up
yeah,
with.
yeah, agreed.
It's
I
not
mean,
the best website design.
No, it's
Anyway.
another
No, it's
area
not.
of opportunity where we can like you use these tools to leverage it when you don't have like the time, right? And you know, as you mentioned, this is volunteer run. We're really like, you know, trying to squeeze it in. We don't have dedicated staff for the website and stuff like that. But also with AI,
Not yet.
could we like take that jump now and like do something more robust?
I mean,
Um,
so we're recording this on a Monday. By the time this episode comes out, this will already be live. But Mere Orthodoxy is about to put out tomorrow, as of this recording, a new website that is basically built from the ground up with Claude, and it is a beautiful, incredible, really creative, and I think genuinely innovative website. It has some features I've never seen in a website of this type before. That it's gonna be my new homepage. It's gonna be the place I want to see when I open a web browser, because it's not only just beautiful, it is like truly excellent as a website. It's Claude.
yeah.
We should really do the thing with Mere Orthodoxy where if our listeners sign up for a Mere Orthodoxy subscription, we can get a referral fee or whatever. We've talked about it with them because we've talked about them a few times
Yeah, a lot of promo
glowingly.
here, you
And I
guys.
know a couple of
I
our
know.
listeners are in the Discord now. So anyways, we'll wrap it up here. This has been a very interesting conversation, and hopefully you can see that there is both strategy to these kinds of things. There's thoughtfulness. We need to think well, think creatively, use your imagination. And also it's very personal. It's about engaging with human beings who need information in order to go about their walk with God. They need to love God with their mind, and we communicate with them to help them do that. So don't neglect this. Don't neglect thinking through how you communicate as a leader, as a business person, as a church leader. These are important aspects to your way of walking with God and serving others. So I just encourage our listeners to communicate well. Send your wife a text message, maybe. Write your kids a card. There are ways to communicate and think about the difference between, the difference between sending a text to your wife versus writing a sticky note and putting it on the mirror. There are differences in each medium, and we should reflect on that. And hopefully by listening to our podcast, you do that and do it well to the glory of God. Use tech, find rest, glorify God. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.